Eden Memorial Chapels understands Jewish funerals can take many forms. Some are very orthodox, while others are more conservative or of a reformed nature. There's no one better in New York or New Jersey. Go to EdenMemorial.com.
It's the left versus the right. In the right corner, it's heavyweight king Curtis Sliwa. In the left corner, it's Anthony Weiner. It's a 77 WABC debate. Heavyweight slugfest on New York's news and talk station, 77 WABC.
So welcome to another episode of Left versus Right. Anthony Weiner on your left, Curtis Sliwa on the right. So great to have you back. We only have less than 2 weeks, about 2 weeks to go before the election. But before we start with that stuff, where we're going to argue about that, we should all be celebrating an amazing couple of weeks here. The Israelis killed Nasrallah, the head of Hezbollah, last week. This past week, they killed Sinwar, the head of Hamas. Listen, what happened on October 7th was a horror, and still people are suffering. But could we be finally seeing the end because these two big terrorist organizations have now been beheaded?
Well, this reminds me of what's happened to Italian organized crime, the mafia, La Cosa Nostra. Nobody now wants to be thought of as the head of any crime family. The Bonanos, Lucchese's, Gambinos, Genovese, Colombos. They all have heads. They're weakened, but nobody wants to be at the top of the chart of the FBI. So all of these groups are going to end up with some kind of leadership. They're going to fill the void. But nobody's going to want to be out front, because the moment they're out front and it's publicized that they're in charge, Mossad and Shin Bet must make up for the lapse of security on October 7th. They've taken this very hard, very personally. It was similar to us in 9/11. Our national security agencies had failed us. So if you happen to be a leader, even in Iran itself, notice the Ayatollah is in hiding. Some of their leaders have escaped to Qatar, which is sort of like the Switzerland out there, where everybody can meet and negotiate. But it's tough times for them.
I mean, look, Sinwar's brother is now taking the lead. Mohammed is taking the lead. But, importantly, people say all the time, well, you can't kill an idea. Well, maybe not. But if you kill enough members of these terrorist organizations, maybe finally the message gets out. And I saw a lot of man-on-the-street stuff that had emerged of people in the territory saying good riddance, meaning that what had happened there, look, Bibi got caught flat-footed because there was a presumption there's no way these organizations would attack Israel because of the annihilation they would face. You know what? That's exactly what happened. Now, you still have to hold Bibi responsible, but you mentioned Iran. They have been quiet as a church mouse recently. Sure, they lobbed in those missiles, and for the most part, they were shot down by the United States and by Israel. It wasn't nothing, but maybe what we've learned here is now that we've taken care, when I say we, the forces of positive, like anyone who's not on side of the devil here. Maybe now that Nasrallah is dead, now that Sinwar is dead, maybe Iran is starting to say, you know what? My surrogate pirate armies are not what I thought they are. Maybe now's the time we can finally get some regional peace.
That's good analysis, except I would say they're ducking their heads. They're in their bomb shelters preparing the uranium to try to turn it into their first atomic weapon. People tend not to mess with countries with atomic weapons. Gaddafi learned that. He gave up his nuclear weapons. De Klerk gave up the nuclear weapons in South Africa. Ukraine gave up their nuclear weapons. Now notice Zelensky's saying, hey, if you don't let us into NATO, we're going to develop a nuclear weapon.
I didn't expect you to take this position, so you think getting out of the nuclear deal with Iran was a mistake?
No. What I'm saying is now, regardless of what happened in the past, we have to help Bibi take out their weapons-making ability of weapons-grade uranium and turning it into a bomb.
Yeah.
They have the help of the North Koreans. We know they have the help of the Russians. We know they have the help of the Red Chinese. They could be speeding up the process now.
Listen, this is the problem. People forget this. When we negotiated with Russia and China and the EU to put sanctions and to stop the nuclear program from going on in Iran, everyone accepted the idea, including Trump's administration, that we had done a good job stopping them to developing a weapon. Now, other things they went out and still did, but you're exactly right. Iran can't get a weapon.
History tells us, look at Menachem Begin. he was universally panned, even by Ronald Reagan, when he took out the nuclear reactor outside of Baghdad.
Right.
Saddam Hussein wanted a nuclear weapon because
Right.
with a nuclear weapon, you're a big boy. They took out the nuclear weapons capacity of Bashir Assad in Damascus. He didn't say nothing. He never does
Right.
when the Israelis attack. So they know when you're walking on the block, if you have a nuclear weapon, all of a sudden
I think
the whole
that's right.
world looks differently at you.
And in the early part of this century, the Israelis were able to knock one out using cyber warfare.
Yes.
But one of the things Iran has learned is they no longer build things above ground. Everything is deep underground, and we, the United States, are going to have to help them with our heavy bunker-busting capabilities in order to do
They're
this.
3 floors down, underground, probably even more, because they know the Israelis, as you mentioned, cyberspace, they put worms into the system that just completely destroy it. Somehow, some way, machine guns are lowered as their scientists are going to the laboratories and they waste them. I mean, if there's one thing Mossad and Shin Bet does, they almost know how the Iranians think, live, sleep, eat, and move.
Right, but let's remember on October 7th, people were pointing fingers, as they should have been, at Bibi Netanyahu because with all of his efforts to reform the judicial system, they had divided the country. They'd taken their eye on the ball. When they went in and found Sinwar's hiding place and they looked at the documents, they knew they could attack when they were because Israelis were distracted.
But notice, as popular as Bibi thinks he is, as the lion of Israel, there's another election. He'll be Winston
Well,
Churchill.
I was just going to ask that. At the time of October 7th, that there would have been an election held, he would have had a difficult time.
out.
Now he's got this right-wing coalition together, and he's grown in popularity. You know, people think, oh, this is controversial, what he's been doing. This is not at all controversial. Even the people who said, let's get the hostages out, agree Sinwar had been the reason they couldn't get the hostages out up to now. So hopefully, it would be really interesting to find out what goes on now in domestic politics in Israel.
It's the Winston Churchill effect. He's our hero today. Boom.
That's probably right. That's probably right. And this right-leaning coalition that he's had is basically built for wartime.
Yes.
Who knows how it'll be otherwise.
Yes.
All right. So that's a piece of universally accepted. By the way, I see universally accepted good news. When I want to know where these kids are out there protesting, waving Hamas flags, if they think it's a bad day that Sinwar got knocked out, that tells you more than you ever need to know about these guys.
To be honest, I just think that's part of an overall philosophy that they attach on to anybody.
I think that's right.
That is considered on the outside looking in.
Well, the bottom line to all of this, the whole way you look at the Middle East is through the eyes of David and Goliath. You and I know that Israel is the David in that relationship, and the Arab states are the Goliath, the terrorist organizations. These kids believe somehow that David is the Palestinians, and now Hamas and Hezbollah, and Israel is the Goliath.
And again, that's because we make a mistake of lumping all people together. All Arab speakers are the same. Everyone who speaks Urdu in Pakistan is the same. They're not. Everyone who speaks Farsi in Iran is the same. They're not. They're as different as Jews are different amongst themselves, as Americans are different. We need to stop putting them all into the same basket.
Well, we also have to realize that, it's kind of like, the Palestinians might not like the Jews, but the Sunni hate the Shia.
Yes. Yes.
I mean, if there's now Iran funds Hamas, which is a Sunni organization, but that doesn't mean that they were always on the same page. Now, Hezbollah was a little bit different, but that's all very good news. All right, let's catch up on what's going on in the campaign. This was an interesting week. It seems that Kamala Harris has been making an effort to kind of reach out in the media to different places. I heard all these complaints. Oh, she never does press conference. She did a press conference. Then she says, well, I never do. They never does interviews. Then she started doing. Well, she never goes into hostile environments. She did this week against Fox. I think she did okay. Fox did fine. They got big ratings over it. On the other side of the coin, Trump seems to be not going into the big places. Skipped NBC. Said he wasn't going to do another debate. He didn't show up at 60 Minutes, something I would think he would do. Tell me a little bit of what you think the strategies of these two candidates are in terms of where they're going and where they're not. Because one place Kamala Harris didn't go, and I heard the rip and read this week. You don't think it's a big deal? Kind of think it is. Didn't go to the Al Smith dinner.
Well, let's deal with the Al Smith dinner first. Who cares? You think there's a Catholic out there? Oh, she didn't go to the Al Smith. This is all for trendoids. This is for wealthy people. This is for people who want to be entertained at a roast, as if it's a Dean Martin
But don't
roast.
you think that candidates should show they can handle different types of environments
Absolutely.
to be ready to be president? People are trying. They don't. I think sometimes people obsess about position papers when really what voters are trying to do is trying to understand what they're made of. And if you go into a hostile environment and you seem like you do okay, kind of like she did with Fox, I think she should have shown up, tell some jokes.
Extraordinarily well when she went
Right.
to the Al Smith dinner.
And Trump didn't, by the way, the last time.
That is correct.
He was okay this time, but the last time.
Look, we know it's not their lines. They have professionals who write it. They practice it. Trump has gotten very good.
He's gotten
doing
much better.
Stand up all the time. Sure, she should have showed up, but you know something? It's not going to make a difference in any one vote. And all they do, she didn't show up. Richard Nixon didn't show up in 72. My first vote was for George McGovern, the peace candidate. Nixon already had the election won. He didn't show up at anything.
Well, here's the bottom line on a lot of these things. It's media people love to be at things that other media people are about,
Right.
and they get very pissy if you don't go. For example, Trump has been doing this thing where he's going on a lot of podcasts, okay? Yeah. The media always gives him a hard time for that because he didn't go on my podcast. I didn't go on my show.
Right. But it is a departure. Now we see the power of podcasts, both candidates. Both Vice President Harris and former President Donald Trump have been making appearances in podcasts, and that's good. More is better than less.
I suppose. I suppose because really what it is, it doesn't matter where you are. You're just doing things that then get bounced around in other places. You play cuts on your show. I play cuts on my show that are from other shows. Some of these shows I never heard of, but once the president goes on there,
and the bottom line. We could rerun this over and over. It still gets down to the last 11 or 12 days. Independent women. In 2016, they broke unexpectedly for Trump. In 2020, they broke for Biden. Who are they going to break for this time?
I think we have a tendency to fight the last war. We always find that, for example, there's movement among Hispanics that is kind of hard to figure out. There's a realignment going on. Who would have thunk it? When he came down that escalator,
right,
talking about Mexicans, that actually conservative Latinos would actually be rallying to that message. On the other hand, Trump is making a big play for young people, traditionally something that are more liberal. A lot of it is going to be which of these new movements turn out to be ephemeral or really happen. We heard so much about how Harris is losing black votes. Poll came out last week. NBC, the same number say they're voting for her as voted for
Anthony,
for
it's all
Trump.
going to be the same. It's still the independent women. Just when a woman thinks she's going to vote for Trump, he says something that puts her back in a neutral camp.
Now, what do you think that's about? Do you think that they're like, oh, that's Trump being Trump, I care about other things? Or is it, of the idea they just don't believe he really believes the things he says, he does them for performance?
Think when he starts calling Harris stupid and idiot, it's flashbacks. This is what men have called them throughout their lives. Even though they're uber achievers, they did better in school. Some of them married guys who had blue-collar jobs. They're white-collar workers. They make more money than their husbands now. The guys, they're always bombastic. And the women, they don't like bullying. They don't like bullying. When I use bullying rhetoric, my number one critics, the women.
Yeah.
So they'll look at that and they'll say, do I really want to bully in the White House? So then that's when they take a second look at Harris. So that's why his advisors, who he never listens to, have said, knock that stuff off. Don't call her stupid. Don't call her an idiot.
I have never seen a campaign that has leaned into being a macho, male-oriented campaign as much as Trump is. Maybe he says, I'm just going to run up the score among men. Even younger men now seem that they're gravitating towards him.
Anthony, the last election, the difference between women and men voters was the vote tally of the state of Texas, which is sizable. That's how many more women voted. It is women vote.
Yeah.
Men talk. And they forget that there was election day. I can't tell you how many households I've been in. The men, did you vote? What? Election day? And you look at the wife.
I mean, there's 1,000 ways that Donald Trump has reshaped the Republican Party, but it always was the Republicans had these harsher positions on things like choice, but they knew it. So they did things like 1,000 points of light,
Correct.
and they always had women out on the campaign and things like that.
Right.
Nowadays, Trump is like leaning really hard into this, and we'll see if
my advice to both Trump and to J.D. Harris is you have wives, make sure they're introducing you at every event and that they get some attention.
Well, it's funny. You and I talked about this last week, and Melania showed up at the Al Smith dinner.
Yes.
So
this might be because it's the final run.
Could be.
Again, J.D. Harris not only is
Vance.
his wife his equal
in
terms of academic achievement, but he's actually credited her as keeping him on the straight and narrow path.
Well, then there's
Let her talk.
Then there's the other thing. She's a brown woman. She's South
Yes.
Asian. She checks a lot of boxes. But as I've said to you before, I don't think you can roll out your vice president's wife if it's going to call attention to the fact that the top of the ticket's wife is not out there. Maybe Melania does get out there. So Kamala Harris is now. Seems like she's spending a lot of time returning to her base, but you got to give her credit. She went on Fox. She got talked over and interrupted and everything else. They try to make hay. I thought she hung in there pretty well.
I would have done this. She can handle herself. Don't.
But that's news to a lot of people in your party. They do this lightweight thing, empty suit thing all the time.
It seems her handlers don't want to give her an hour. If you would have given Brett Baer an hour, you're cheese boxing at 25 minutes.
For goodness sake, of all the complaints, now it's you sat down, but you didn't sit down long enough.
She didn't have the opportunity. I watched intently. It was about 25 minutes. She never interjected abortion. She was talking to Republican women, some of whom are very upset with their party about abortion. And she could have said, and Brett. And he would have listened, and then they could have had a little discussion. Because they got all hyper, both of them.
Well, Brett was eager to show. Remember, Brett Baer has a sketchy record. It came out in that lawsuit.
Trump hates him.
Also, it came out in that lawsuit that he knew that he was lying to his viewers and he thinks he's a hard news guy. Look, I think it is always good. When I was in Congress, I would always go on Fox News all the time.
Yeah, you were. You were like lens lights.
And Nancy Pelosi called me in and said, that's not our brand. We're not doing anything to get them fired up. And my view is, even if there's 2% out there that might have an open mind, the idea that you're willing to stand up and talk about Obamacare on Fox.
Locally,
and nowadays it could come down to 1 or 2 points.
Locally, whenever I look at the big screen TVs in our studio, I see Mike Lawler. He's on MSNBC, he's on CNN, Fox, and that's the way it should be. Not just friendly fire.
Right.
Get in the pit and take incoming. You were excellent at that. When you would go on Fox, they'd be salivating, and you'd mix it up.
But let me, and that's a little bit of what I do here at ABC Radio. Like, no one ever says, and John never says, nerf your attacks.
No, you were single payer. That was
exactly.
The Fox audience wanted to burn you at the stake.
But there does seem, who doesn't believe that is Donald Trump recently. He's not showing up at any place. He didn't take CNN's offer to do a town hall meeting. We didn't want to do a second debate. He ducked 60 Minutes of all places. It seems to be.
Well, the irony is, Anthony, remember back when he came down the escalators, how many times he would get interviews because he would do it on the spur of the moment. You know how the media operates.
Also, he would call into networks all the time.
Right, and they love that media because if you went to Ted Cruz, who was considered, and Jeb Bush, it would take them a week to get back to you. We got to take a vote on this. Trump would say, no, I'm going right now. Almost that scene in Casino, where Robert De Niro is sitting there and he's got his trousers on the side. I'll go on right now. And they love that. And he did everybody's program.
But that's not him, and that's not him. Now in October of 2024, clearly there's been a strategic, I don't know if it's strategy.
No, it's strategy.
Or it is more a function of when he does his interview and his talks now, he doesn't sound great. And when we come back from the break, I'm going to ask you a tough question. Is he okay? Kamala Harris released her health records. We haven't heard anything about that from Donald Trump. This is The Left versus the Right. Anthony Weiner, Curtis Lee will come back after the break.
It's the left versus the right. It's a 77 WABC debate. Heavyweight slugfest. 77 WABC. It's the The left versus the right. In the right corner, it's heavyweight king Curtis Sliwa. In the left corner, it's Anthony Weiner. It's a 77 WABC debate. Heavyweight slugfest.
Welcome back to Left versus Right. Anthony Weiner on the left and Curtis Sliwa on your right. If you miss any part of this program, you get it as a podcast. Also, it's available on YouTube. We're making it, I don't know how they do it. They're making it into TikTok videos. Any way you get the information, you can get this show. So we've talked about where they're going. Let's talk a little bit about what they're saying. Is there an ism or an ist that is not being thrown around? Kamala Harris is a communist, a socialist, and Donald Trump is an insurrectionist or a fascist. These things are getting thrown around a lot. You know, for those like you and me who kind of studied all this stuff and who know that they have real meanings, we're getting a little bit over our skis.
It's noise. It's not. Most voters, they have no idea. I mean, it's almost like a throwback to the Depression. Remember when you would have sizable groups of communists who would argue with socialists?
Well, that's the point. If you called a communist a socialist,
Right.
that was an insult.
Exactly.
Now they're getting bunched together.
Even in the communists, are you a Stalinist or are you a Trotskyite? I mean, I've been to all those meetings. And then, of course, fascism. You know, most people have no idea what fascism is now unless you're a baby boomer or even older. You know, you think of Hitler, you think of Mussolini. But I don't think it resonates with anybody.
Well, let me ask you something. When Donald Trump says on Friday when he's on Fox News and he says, if school districts don't do what I want, I'm going to make them do it. Or when he says, I'm going to prosecute the enemy of the people and the blood of our people is getting diluted and everything else. That is tiptoeing up to the kind of language you might see used by a fascist leader.
Thankfully, our government has checks and balances, and no one person.
What is our check on? What is our check?
We have our courts. We have the
court
House,
said that he's immune.
Senate.
Anytime he uses his official power, he's immune from prosecution.
Boy, he's not going to go out and mass arrest his enemies. Come on.
Well, he's allowed to now.
And Trump and
by the way, Biden is allowed to also.
Right, and certainly Biden has exercised that with Trump. I mean, come on, look at all these cases.
So you're saying that there aren't, but well, if Trump wanted to be a fascist on day one,
I think
what
he's more
stops him
bark
now?
than bite. Remember, lock her up, lock her up. The moment he got sworn in, now I like Bill and
What are you talking about? What are you talking about? What are we talking about? He appointed a special prosecutor and said investigate Hillary.
He said Hillary and Bill, they're okay. And then Comey,
No, he didn't.
right?
He investigated them.
You guys wanted to get rid of Comey. The Republicans wanted to get rid of Comey.
We all wanted to get rid of Comey, but hold on.
Right,
First of all,
and he kept Comey.
Don't believe the hype. He kept Comey and then investigated him with the IRS. He appointed a special prosecutor to try to get to the bottom of Hillary.
And then he ended up with Ray. Right, he ended up with Ray.
Right, but he tried to do all these things. The whole idea that he didn't try to do it. Of course, he tried to do it, and then in the period after the election, he tried to subvert the democracy. Then, I mean, he's getting pretty close to being.
It is so much hype. Trust me, it is so much hype.
Is Kamala Harris a socialist?
No, she's not a socialist. She's a liberal progressive. She has those credentials.
Right. And
Trump, I would say, is a populist. He's a populist. He believes, very much like Bernie Sanders did about trade policy. He wants tariffs. You got to listen to what the guy says. He's not a geopolitical kind of guy.
He
like
said he's going to use the
Republicans.
military to crack down on protests.
Let's see if he
well,
does
you're
it.
saying that you don't believe. This is an interesting question.
Yeah.
Like a lot of people say, there was a story in the New York Times. He spoke at the Detroit Economic Club.
Right.
And he said all this anti-Detroit stuff. And afterwards, reporters were interviewing people, expecting them to be outraged. And he doesn't mean anything he says. No. How do you assess a candidate if you don't take what he says seriously?
You have to understand, he's a different candidate. He is an entertainer before he is a candidate.
Well, he could be president again.
He obviously has an agenda, but he's changed the way discourse is. He entertains, but he also has a platform. The problem with previous election cycles is you would have stiff, sort of participatory kind of people who would not engage the regular
So when
population.
he says mass deportations, deputizing the military to arrest
Never going to
people.
be able to do that. You know that.
Wait a minute. Not going to be able to, or is not going to try?
Can't.
Why?
And he's not even going to try.
Why?
It's all bluster.
Look, I can tell you this. In 2017, when he took office, he talked about all these immigration things and never did anything about them. He never did it. He never had an Immigration Reform Act of 2018 to fix all these problems he said that he saw.
Not taking 11 million people and sending them back.
So in that case, you say that the listeners to Left versus Right, when they're considering that and something they vote on, they should ignore it?
Of course. It's the difference between when he was president, the border, there was more controls at the border than when Biden and Harris came in and immediately through executive order changed the way we dealt with border issues. It's obvious.
Hold on a second. So if we don't take him literally, how do we assess if you're a voter and you want to know what the guy's going to do when he gets? Is he going to do? Let me ask you this:
Harris doesn't say anything.
Well, she's got her proposals.
We know what her position is. As Bernie Sanders said, she's going to say what she has to say to get elected. I know Harris. She'll be okay.
So we should ignore their proposals of the two sides? How do we? That's what I'm asking you.
On policy, you compare policy, and they clearly have differences.
Okay. So in other words, when he says, I'm going to put tariffs on everything that comes into the country, we should take it seriously.
We know he will.
We should take that seriously.
Absolutely.
So we should lock in 10%, 15% inflation right away.
And then if he sits down and he negotiates out of it, that's what he likes to do.
So immediately all of our prices are going to go up 10%, 15%.
And remember, that's what Bernie Sanders wanted to do too.
Well, no one ever wanted. No one ever wanted across-the-board tariffs.
Oh, no, not the military, but tariffs.
No, across-the-board tariffs.
American workers.
No one said across-the-board tariffs. That would be idiotic. That's why it's an idiotic proposal. And all these economists, like the Kudlows of the world, said, "Don't take him so seriously. It's a negotiating position." I don't know what voters are supposed to do with that information then if he says, never mind these crazy things I said.
Don't even understand tariffs, to be honest with you.
Oh, I don't know.
They don't understand
They know that if you increase the cost of something that you have to buy by 10%, you know that's inflation.
When they went to the supermarket, the regular things were a lot cheaper when Trump was president than they are now.
And they know that their drug costs are much lower because of Joe Biden. You're welcome. And they know that the stock market's higher because of Joe Biden. You're welcome. And they know that job creation's never been higher because of Joe Biden.
You're welcome. To sell that to America.
See, that's the point. That's the point. This whole squishy Trumpian thing of don't take me seriously, take me seriously.
You had a person who was the president who was unable to get that across for years because he was impaired.
Right.
Then you have Harris who has to pick up the pieces in the last few months. Yeah. It would be very difficult for anybody.
Well, let's talk about impaired for a minute. So last week, Kamala Harris releases her health records. Every presidential candidate going back to the 50s has done this, except for Donald Trump. We have no idea what's going on with this.
Health. Perfect.
This guy, okay, and then the same week,
phone call, the perfect letter, everything's perfect.
And then the same week that happens, he has a rally in Pennsylvania, and someone falls ill or whatever it is.
Two women fainted.
Right. And he says, instead of continuing the rally, let's spend 36 minutes standing on stage, swaying back and forth to the music he heard.
Yeah, his playlist, which included Sinead O'Connor.
Curtis.
Did Catholic Charities know that one of his favorites is Sinead O'Connor ripped up the Post picture on Saturday Night Live?
Curtis, he's not well.
Oh, he's well.
Why does
he realize? No, he realized.
What was that about? It sounded, and have you heard him talk?
Yeah, no.
Have you looked at him?
Yeah,
I got to tell you something.
Speak for 2 hours.
Why won't he tell us his health situation?
He told you he's the healthiest man alive. His previous doctor in 2016 said he's the healthiest guy ever to be the president.
He's older than anyone ever to stand for the office. Okay, he's showing signs of cognitive decline. He's slurring his speech. He's rambling. Everything else.
Anthony, I'm coming off of Joe Biden, where it was like every day, but the Democrats never wanted to. Hold on a second. Never wanted to acknowledge.
Not this person. We all acknowledge the guy was old, too old, but a good president. Now he's not the candidate anymore.
How can you be old, impaired, and be a good president?
No, he was a good president, but was too impaired to run for office. Being a candidate is a very different kettle of fish. I
understand.
You can sit in a wheelchair in the 1930s and 40s and be a pretty good president and not be a great candidate.
You look at Trump's schedule, right? It's like morning, noon, and night. The guy is all over the place.
Well, only because we dragged his sorry ass off the golf course.
And there's nothing wrong with him, as two women had fainted because it was hot and sweltering, the air conditioning wasn't working. Just, hey, let's play a little music. Everybody loved that.
Hold on.
Everybody loved that.
You want to do an exercise? It was not 1 or 2 minutes. It was 36 minutes of him swaying back and forth.
His from his Spotify
He's a candidate for president, and then all the sycophants around him.
The crowd loved it.
Oh, I don't know, man.
Oh, there was nobody who said, "Oh, I'm so disappointed."
No, a lot of people left. No one sat there for 36 minutes to watch
hot
him.
and sweltering. The air conditioning.
Make up your
working.
mind. Make up your mind. If
Look,
people
I
didn't
like that change of pace very much.
Oh
so.
my God!
Oh, it was great.
I have never seen anything like that. Here's my position.
Yes.
If you run for office and you're
Yes.
that old, American people have a right to know whether we're voting for Vance for president or him for president. And he is showing signs every day of being a half a fry short of a Happy Meal,
Well,
man.
you keep thinking that. I mean, after coming off of Biden,
Oh my God!
you guys are the last people in the world to talk about
When
cognitive
you
issues.
stop making it a partisan thing, we should release the health records of all of our candidates.
I agree with that, but
Okay.
there's nothing in the rules that say you have to.
I understand, but it's another norm that protects voters.
Well, then it has to be passed legislatively.
I don't mind
I
that.
think there should be legislation to demand X number of debates. Certain things in terms of you have to produce. How wealthy are you?
Correct.
How did you accumulate?
Another
wealth?
thing
I don't
Trump-
have a problem with
another
that.
thing Trump refused to
But
do.
there's nothing in the rules that say you have to do that now.
What about-
because the rich don't want to do that to him because then they're going to have to do it to themselves.
Well, what about the
Democrats and
idea
Republicans.
that he lied and said he would do both those things? He would release his health records and he would release his
Right, didn't
financial
you see
records.
that psycho doctor right out there? Hey,
Are
this
you
guy's the
okay?
healthiest guy ever to run for
Are
president.
you okay with your candidate lying to us like that?
Oh my God! I expect politicians to lie to us. Harris lies
So
to
you're
us.
fine with
Trump-
the standard. Well, what is Harris?
Excuse
What did
me,
Harris
I'm
ever?
like
When did
Diogenes.
Harris ever lie?
I'm like Diogenes. I'm walking around looking for one honest man. It's the degree of the lies.
All right,
we have only two choices. Most Americans did not want either Biden, Harris, or Trump.
No. They
Most
didn't want.
Americans-
They didn't want Biden and Trump, and we got rid of half
But
that problem.
They really didn't want Harris either.
What are you talking
Well,
about?
you inherit Biden, you inherit Harris. What did Harris say to The View? I would do everything the same that Biden did. Come on, that was a mistake.
It was. I talked about it in my podcast.
Of course,
That's an easy.
The politicians make mistakes.
But wait a minute. But someone who lies as much as Trump must trouble you.
Well, what is that? Yeah, how do we do? We strap him to a lie detector machine?
No. He about facts. He lies about facts.
Oh, yeah, but
we know he lied about sleeping with a porn star. We know that.
Who
but
is the arbiter of the facts? What, Frank Morano, the truth teller?
wait, hold on a
he sits
second.
there with a bell.
hold on a second. Are you telling me there's no such thing as facts?
Of course they're facts, but again,
So
many
you
of the
can
facts
fact check
that we
someone.
were told during COVID never matched up.
No. Someone's
Never matched up.
Wait a minute. The number of people dead is a fact, right?
It's a fact.
The number of jobs created is a fact, right? The number of there are some. Dude, we can't even agree on the statistics.
Crime is down according to the FBI. Crime is down. Everybody, and now we find out no, crime is actually up.
No,
The
we
FBI
found out that-
stats is up.
You know what number you can't mess with?
What's that?
Murders. You got a body.
Oh, excuse me. Nobody feels safe in America. Oh, we're all.
You know
safe.
why? Because you and your cult leader keep yelling how dangerous it
Oh my
is.
God, all you have to do is look at these videos of swarms of looters going into 7-Eleven.
Crossings are lower than they were.
Walgreens closing. Dwayne Reed closing. 7-Eleven's closing.
Curtis.
CVS closing. Why are they closing?
Curtis, you-
Because of looting and because of
Curtis.
all-out crime.
Curtis, you, Donald Trump, the New York Post, 77 WABC, you have it in your interest to scare the crap out of people. But if you look at data, if we can't agree on basic elements of gravity, then we can't have a democracy. If everyone says, oh, I can lie whenever I want, because who really knows? No, we know, for example, that the only president in American history to lose jobs is Donald Trump, that Democrats have created all the jobs in the past administrations. We know the stock market is at a record for the 15th time under Democratic
Of course,
rule.
because you love the rich. The Democratic Party has become the party of the rich,
My dude,
the wealthy, obviously,
if
and
you
the working
believe-
class people are slowly but ever so surely turning over to the Republican Party.
75% of the American population is invested in the stock market in some form or
Yeah,
another.
401k, I get
Exactly.
it and all that.
And they're
But
doing much
not
better.
Whales. They're
And
not the
do-
big people.
And what about the people
What
getting
did
the
the
jobs?
millionaires here in New York do? They all donated to Harris.
What did and who created jobs? Biden created more jobs than any president in
and
modern
Trump never
history.
created jobs?
No, he net lost jobs.
Oh, excuse me. Something like COVID came
Yeah,
along.
yeah. So we're not going to count the
And
we're not going to
caused
count the third here.
lockdown and whole industries basically sending their workers home.
So you're not gonna count the COVID year because he screwed up the management of the COVID crisis. We did worse.
Never had a situation like that ever occur
We did
before.
worse in our country than other countries because we had horrible leadership.
Oh,
you can't. Oh wait, hold on a second. So you're saying
ventilators.
you want to put Donald Trump in charge because he can handle a crisis? The one crisis he had, he screwed it up.
And Dr. Fauci handled it well?
Dr. Fauci did handle it well.
Now it appears
Dr. Fauci did not say drink bleach.
Everything's falling
Dr. Fauci
apart.
didn't say use a bright light.
You could pass around fault to everybody on that, Republicans and Democrats, but they did not know what to do. Either the Democrats or the Republicans. No one
but President,
before.
no one but Trump said we're going to get over it. Don't worry about it.
Fauci.
No one but Trump.
He kept your hero.
Right, but he didn't listen to Fauci. He said drink bleach.
I mean, after a while.
Was that a good idea to drink?
How could you live? Of course not. That's not a good idea.
Only an idiot would say that.
Fauci even said, well, the reason that I didn't tell everybody to wear masks is we needed masks for the healthcare providers, but I lied. I lied. I lied, right? Didn't he say he lied?
So we should not count.
I don't trust any of them,
So when
Anthony.
Trump hit a crisis and he screwed it up, you're like, people get crisis and screw shit up all the time.
Let's see. Oh, okay. Oh, you're speeding up the vaccines. Excellent. You're putting together a partnership of private corporations and government to get those vaccines done and then sent throughout the world.
Right.
We did that here in America.
Yeah, we totally did. And what did Donald Trump say? Don't worry about it. It's going to pass. It's like the flu. It's like having a cold. It's no worse. And by the way, let me go give Chris Christie COVID.
There was nobody who was spot on this. There's nobody you can point to who was right on. Everybody made mistakes.
If you want to blame Biden for immigration patterns in Latin America, you got it.
Excuse me.
You can't say I'm not going to blame Trump
Biden
for screwing up COVID.
To executive orders every restriction that Trump had imposed.
Venezuela didn't collapse because of Joe Biden. And we'll be right back after the break.
It's the left versus the right. It's a 77 WABC debate. Heavyweight slugfest. 77 WABC. It's the left versus the right. In the right corner, it's heavyweight king Curtis Sliwa. In the left corner, it's Anthony Weiner. It's a 77 WABC debate. Heavyweight slugfest.
So welcome back to Left versus Right. Anthony Weiner on your left and Curtis Sliwa on your right. If you miss Curtis's programs, you're not paying attention. You're missing great stuff during the week on the Rip and Read, on the overnights during the weekends. He does Animal Welfare Hour tomorrow. So we talked a lot about national, international stuff. Let's bring it a little bit closer home. When Donald Trump was here for the Al Smith dinner, he made some funny remarks, basically shouted out Eric Adams.
Yep.
Said some nice things about Eric Adams, said you and I are in this thing together, basically. Now, is that kind of like getting the kiss of death when you get, or is that, or are we kind of quietly seeing an Adams strategy here, rooting quietly for Donald Trump? Tell me what the math is there.
It's Adams' only hope. These are serious charges. We can poo-poo them. But when you come in with an inordinate amount of evidence and you have some people within the Adams administration who are going to become cooperators and are going to testify, that's what's happening as we speak. He's going to have a very difficult time if it goes to trial. What he's hoping for is that as Trump keeps saying this, and the U.S. attorneys have to turn in their portfolios on January 20th, if Trump is elected president, that whoever he changes, because he's not keeping these two guys, Eastern District and Southern District, Damian Williams and the other guy, I think his name is Peace. He's not keeping them. He's bringing his own guys in. Problem is, when these cases are already underway, how far on the shelf can you put the case?
Yeah.
And so that's a Hail Mary pass.
I mean, but Main Justice, even when Trump came in the last time, they don't take indictments and tear them up because there's a new guy.
But that's why I'm saying it's a Hail Mary pass. Now, can Trump slow things down? Of course. Can Trump say to the Department of Justice, man, I really don't want you to make this a priority? Of course. But eventually, it comes to trial.
Well, I think that's probably right. I mean, the other thing is you can't shake a dead cat without hitting someone who's being nice to Trump because they think he can pardon them. I mean, Trump throws
commutation.
Yeah, Trump throws around pardons like all the time. Now, you said this is a lot of evidence. Really? Is it? Yeah. It's one person.
That's now. There will be superseding indictments.
Okay. But you said there's evidence now that you've seen.
Yes.
It seems pretty thin right now. I mean, okay, let's put aside there might be
donors, more. They have that nailed down. That's a crime.
They don't have him.
Foreign influence.
They don't have him.
Donors. It's his campaign.
Okay.
Sign off.
Hold on.
I am in charge of my campaign. This is the treasurer. There are two people in a campaign when you take campaign financial contributions that get matched that are responsible for everything. He is not charged with
violations of state law. He's charged with federal crimes on the straw donor thing that has to do with these foreign donations. And I read the indictment. One person said they got an email that he acknowledged. That's the best you got on the straw donors.
Well, wait, Anthony.
Okay, but you keep saying...
The best is yet to come.
So which is it? This is a strong case, or it's going to be a strong case?
No, it's one case of many coming down the pipe.
Okay. This is a strong case, or it's going to be down the pipe?
It's a very strong
Let's
case.
stick with that, and then we'll go into what's down the pipe. Give me they have no emails from him saying, go do this. They have him getting the upgrades, but no, in order for this to be a bribe, he has to get the upgrades in connection with something else. The something else didn't happen until years later. So I have to tell you something. I am not convinced that this is a strong case today. Today they have one person who he's fired, who apparently did the straw donor things with the Turkish people. That guy, the only email they refer to in the indictment is one where he basically acknowledges it. He doesn't, and he could say, I was just acknowledging that you're telling me, not that I acknowledge that I know anything about it. I got to tell you something. This sounds to me like you might be wishing this was more than it really is.
When that same person sends a text and said, Mr. Mayor, please remove all of my texts, and he says, I always do.
What's the crime?
Back. Okay, you see where it goes now.
No, but I'm saying that can be the state of...
Anthony,
hold on a second.
You're like everyone else. You're craning. Your neck is craning. There's more there. I've been talking about this for years.
I want to make the distinction, though, between a prediction about what may happen, which will either happen or not, and what we know, which is the indictment.
His biggest problem is his legal defense fund is running out of money. He's got some high-profile attorneys. He's got to keep them on beyond retainer. You know what they charge per hour, $500 minimum, $1,000 an hour. His fund is depleted. Nobody's contributing to that
I have to tell you, I have always had problems with these legal defense funds because they're not regulated the same way a campaign fund would be. But we saw that, for example, Dolan, the guy that owns MSG, clearly has interest before the city. He has a tax exemption because...
And his whole family give $5,000.
Right,
That's
okay.
the top, right.
And so that money is starting to dry up. I'm not crazy about that either. I don't even know how. One of the arguments, by the way, is why you don't indict an executive of a government is because it makes it very complicated on sorting out what's happening.
You know, because some of his people are targets. In order for them to stay on Team Adams, he has to promise to raise money for their legal defense if they get indicted.
Right. Something Donald Trump obviously did. All those people, a lot of people testified for him.
They're going to jump ship.
Right.
So that's all pending now.
It's I got to tell you, you're right. The recent filings came out that showed not only is his legal defense drying up, but donations to his reelection are drying up. And I don't know what else you'd expect. If I had just had my campaign come under scrutiny, the first thing I would do is say, everyone stop everything. Let's make sure we're doing this 100%. I think that's what should be his answer. I stopped fundraising because people raise questions about my fundraising. I'm doing belted suspenders to make sure it's legal.
Well,
so the moment I ask
someone, great advice, but I have a feeling Eric Adams has very few consiglieres that he listens to. He really does need somebody to say to him, no, Eric, don't say that, don't do that. Don't stick your finger in the Fed's eyes because their resource will overwhelm you. You're not a billionaire, Eric.
Well, here's the other problem. You know the correlation between polling numbers and fundraising numbers.
Yeah.
One of the reasons people want to have polls is so they can wave around, look, I'm at 19%. If you give me money, I can get to 25%. So a lot of people are thinking, okay, now I'm going to write a check to Eric Adams. He's looking like dead man walking. And by the way, I have 5 other candidates who are running.
As you know, because you have to publicize this.
Yeah.
It has to be made public. Nobody wants 32 reporters looking into your family business, who you are, what you do. So he's in a very tough spot fiscally.
Well, I don't know about very tough spot. He's probably raised enough to max out for a campaign in 2025.
Yes, for the campaign he does. So this whole idea that he didn't raise any money for his campaign, he's got what he needs to run a primary.
even though usually incumbents look extra muscular by raising a whole bunch of money that maybe they don't even actually need, running money for
he's got the benefit of free publicity every day as mayor.
Well,
something that
that's actually cutting against him right now.
Correct. But if he were to actually listen to some advisors, some consiglieres, that's his problem.
Well, let me ask you about that. Everywhere he goes, notwithstanding what he wants to talk about, reporters just want to ask him about this.
Yes.
And there's no perfect answer for how to do this. You can sit down, like remember Geraldine Ferraro's husband sat down, says, ask me, I'm going to stay here for 5 hours, ask me any questions you want about my financial dealings, and then we're going to put it aside. The days of
never went
that
away.
doesn't exist. Well, also it doesn't exist anymore. It's not like you have 5 TV cameras in front of you.
Right.
Now you have every reporter who wants to get the next thing.
Well, I think that my advice to him: knock off the fancy suits, because people say, "How did you afford?" These are things that affect the voters.
He's not going to masquerade as someone different.
Don't be going out at night.
That he stopped. You don't see those stories anymore.
But still, he's got to stop it, period. Go out in the streets, be seen in the subways, let the word get around that he's paying attention to being mayor. Now he at least has meetings with his senior staff officials in the morning. He never used to have that. Now it's on his calendar.
Yeah.
You can see what he's scheduling to do. And
it was a good sign who he's bringing in for public safety, a kind of a very boring guy.
Vanilla.
Very, and
who's got more chocolate than me?
A career guy. I mean, that's the kind of thing.
Let's face it. It's Park Avenue vanilla. It's wasps he's bringing in. And who's guiding his hand on that? Hochul.
Well, but
Hochul
also
is basically looking at every
Curtis,
appointee.
he's doing what you say you want him to do. He's not bringing in connected people anymore. He's not going out at night anymore. But just yesterday, he did a press conference not far from where I live, rolling out these new environmental things along the East River to stop us from being a victim of future storms. He seems to be doing all that. The problem is no reporter is going to report about some new sanitation program.
No.
They want to know what's going on. It's very hard, and this is why just being indicted, whether you're guilty of it or not, is such a political death sentence usually, just having that hanging over your head. And it seems like it's very difficult for him. That's why I try to get you to focus on what's actually in the indictment, but you're thinking the same way all political people are. What's coming next? What's coming next?
I know more than anybody else. More than that, I can't say. Because I've been on this case for years. Probably before you heard it from anybody else, you heard it from me and Nancy here at WABC.
Right. There was a lot of stuff that and as a matter of fact, the thing that you've been on the most is the stuff we've heard the least about. If you recall, before the indictment came out, it was leaked out. We're looking at 5 different countries. We've heard a lot about Turkey, but not about your pet peeve,
China. Right.
China's
CCP.
the part. It doesn't seem to me, that's the part, if you had to predict what will be next, it might be that.
And that's Eastern District.
Right. And also, an interesting tell, his Turkish person, he cut bait with her immediately because it was clear she was cooperating. And also she had done illegal things. The China person... Winnie Greco quietly left the administration with an arm around her and everything else. Do you think that she's the fulcrum to what's going to come next if there is a China chapter of
without
this?
Without a doubt. That's his Achilles heel, because she's involved with his son, his travels, lodging, Eric, to show how he personally benefited. That's really what you have to show. How did Eric Adams, mayor, candidate, borough president, personally benefit from these trips?
Well, you've got one other thing that you need. With the interpretations of the Supreme Court of these corruption statutes, now you've got to show not only did he get a benefit, not only did he do something favorable, but the two things had to be connected. He had to be doing one because of the other.
The difference here is the foreign influence. We saw that with Bob Menendez, Qatar, Egypt. There was foreign money pouring in.
I know, but the difference is with Menendez had authority to do things to help the Egyptians out. As we have learned, the best that they come up with on Turkey is a fire inspection. What influence did he have in China? Remember, even the woman who was close to Hochul that got charged, what was she accused of? She was accused of changing some language about Taiwan in a resolution. Are you kidding me? The crazy thing to me is the Chinese, the Turks, to even believe that Eric Adams had influence over anything.
The foreign influence is the most dangerous thing happening. those that want to influence us realize you don't have to fight us. You don't need cyber technology. You don't need to take out a grid. You just bribe our politicians.
I understand, but
our politicians are always open to be bribed.
But bribing Adams to do what? He has no policy control over anything.
Well, guess what? You'll see it in the superseding indictments.
I mean, okay, the guy puts up a flag down at Bowling Green at the drop of a hat. I don't think you need to bribe him to do that.
Damian Williams so far has notches on his belt.
Well, let's see. Let's see.
Thorough.
But the very important difference here is that Eric Adams, unlike Menendez, had no position of authority over anything to do with foreign anything.
Well, he actually has no position to do anything in the city anymore. Adrian Adams runs the city council. The police department is adrift. He really has become a glorified borough president.
What is going on? I have had trouble following what's going on with the police commissioner. He named a temporary police commissioner, this guy Donnellan.
Who then got raided.
He then got raided
FBI.
looking for classified documents.
From 20 years
It's
ago.
a Mar-a-Lago situation going on there.
Let's face it, if you are even associated with Eric Adams, you get raided.
But is he done? Is he done?
They haven't explained it. No, he's still there as the interim.
He's still there as the interim.
They've told us that Jessica Tisch, the sanitation commissioner from the very wealthy Park Avenue Tisch family, is ready to become the permanent police commissioner.
I know, but let's not.
That would be a disaster.
Let's not be dismissive of her. She's devoted her life to public service. I mean, as very often wealthy families have, devote their life. She has. I don't think she would be
as mayor on your worst day. You wouldn't have picked her as your police commissioner.
Let's just say,
come on, you got to lift guy and gals' morals.
I understand.
Department.
I would not. This is unfair to say. It's probably sexist. It's probably whatever, ableist or whatever it is. She doesn't look the part.
No.
He doesn't look the part.
And by the way, you're either going to go outside of the department completely, and that would be a mistake right now, or you're going to elevate somebody in the department who people look up to that may not necessarily be the favorite of the bosses already there or even of the mayor. I would suggest to the mayor, leave the police department alone. He's always...
She was a civilian, a high-ranking civilian official in the police department in the de Blasio administration, if I'm correct about that.
I believe Bloomberg.
She was like... Was it Bloomberg? I thought she was the deputy commissioner of... But it was not... She's not a cop.
No.
And I do think that if you want to restore confidence, maybe you go with a cop. She seems like a very able person. She's done some interesting things with
for
sanitation.
Not
but
for
she's
running
also
a police department.
That's not fair. People care about trash. People care about trash. No one cares about more than you, Mr. Rat Czar in waiting.
Trust me, it's just talking to cops. Cops are not political. They just want somebody who reflects what they need. They're working too much overtime, forced overtime. It's affecting their family life, and it's affecting their productivity.
I think that one of the things we've learned over generations about the police commissioner, as the second most prominent official, a lot of times they're called to kind of instill confidence in the people and in the police, and those things require, we've come to believe there's a certain type.
Well, look,
fair or not.
The best decision that de Blasio ever made was to take Bratton on. That was his insurance policy. His wife, Charlene, wanted Phil Banks.
And the same way who was
under investigation at that time.
Same way with Bloomberg.
Imagine how embarrassing that would have been.
Same way with Bloomberg and Ray Kelly.
Yeah, exactly.
So thank you very much for joining us. Anthony Weiner on your left, Curtis Sliwa on your right. If you missed any part of it, get it as a podcast. Take it away, Vinny Medugno.